Hi and welcome to a special episode of the We Need a Roads podcast, as I am not only joined by my co-host David, who has been let out of his horror dungeon to see the light of day, and also our US correspondent Mr. Jose Lopez joining us from where it's always sunny in Florida, but we also have a special treat for you today, because usually on We Need a Roads it's just the two or the three of us, mostly talking about films and shows that we like, and we rarely have guests on the show. Of course, our first guest was friend of the pod and best-selling international crime author extraordinaire Charlie Gallagher, but our next guest, who you're going to hear from later today, is Mr. Dan Crinnion, who is the editor of many top TV shows such as Jed Mercurio's Critical, one of our favourite new shows of the year, Disney Plus's Extraordinary, and he was Emmy nominated for the Desperate Times episode of Killing Eve, for which he won the ACE Eddie Award. So, I had a great chat with Dan recently about how he got started in the industry and how you go from an on-set runner to an award-winning editor. We spoke about what makes a great project and what makes a bad project, and we delved into how one of our favourite shows of the year so far, Extraordinary, was put together, and also who gets to choose all those brilliant songs that are in it. I hope you enjoy it. Hi and welcome to the We Need a Roads podcast, and this is a very special episode this week as we are joined by our biggest guest so far on the show, and that is Mr. Dan Crinnion, the editor of one of our favourite shows of the year so far, Disney Plus's new Extraordinary. Now, Dan has worked on a number of massive shows throughout the years, including Jed Mercurio's Critical, The Last Kingdom, Harlots, and most notably Killing Eve, for which she was nominated for an Emmy, BAFTA, and won an ACE Eddie Award. For listeners not familiar with that, an Eddie is the American Cinema Editors Award, and that was for the Desperate Times episode of Killing Eve. So, welcome to the show, Dan. And my first question is, I suppose, when did you decide you wanted to be an editor, and how did you get your start in the industry?
It's going to make me sound very old, because I am. So I finished uni in 1996, and I decided I didn't want to do the degree I'd done at university. And I'd spent 3 years watching film and television, effectively with my flatmates, which was almost like a degree. So I announced to my mum and dad that I wanted to go into film and TV on the night before my graduation. And they said, that's fine. But they said, you have to have a job in it by September if you're going to be serious. So I wrote a load of letters, like back in the day when we wrote letters. And I got a letter back from Ealing Film Studios saying, will you come and do a week's work experience? So I went for a week and ended up staying for 2 months working for free. And then I was delivering post, and I delivered post to a first-time producer, a woman called Jane Featherstone. Now, if you know Jane Featherstone now, she went on to co-found Kudos Television, which made Spooks and, oh God, you know, all those fantastic programs. And she's also, her company, Sister Pictures, has just produced Chernobyl. So she's sort of like a fairly major player in the TV world. But at the time, it was her first job. It was a Robson Green drama. And I just got chatting to her. And she said to me, would you like to come along and be our production runner? Which, you know, it's the greatest position in the world, because then you get to know every position in TV, really, because every department, because you go around every department. And I just like editors. It's the simple truth is, of all the environments I went into and all the people I chatted to, I really just liked the editors. From there, I just sort of tried to work out what they did. And then it sort of turned out, I was becoming like the oldest runner in town for a while. And I think they all got fed up with me. And in the end, a woman called Verity Lambert, she was making a show called The Caslets for BBC. And I got on well with her. And she sort of said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think I want to edit. They told the editor who came in, they said, would you take Dan as a trainee? And that was it. And I started on The Caslets. And that was then we had Lightworks. Do you remember Lightworks?
Remember hearing about it, yeah.
Yeah, so Lightworks was the sort of halfway house between the Steenbeck and Offline. So it had like the paddle, which was like the Steenbeck. I learned to cut and edit drama on Lightworks, and I was pretty quick, because that in those days you only had one piece of kit, so you'd load the rushes in for the editor in the morning, and then you spend the afternoon watching them.
And well, that's great, I suppose, yeah, because then you're literally seeing how the process works, what they're doing, learning it by watching. Yeah,
it's utterly amazing. It was like your own film school. And what would happen is, very quickly, it's a lovely guy called Anthony Coombs who taught me. He would sort of go home at 5 o'clock and leave me a scene and just say, well, here you go, have a go at cutting that and we'll talk about it in the morning. So every night I'd just edit a scene. And that sort of built. So I learned sort of really quickly. And I feel sorry for assistants now, because I don't think they get that same certainly in drama, they don't get the same opportunity because it's so file based and so involved now. The assistant's job is so important that they just don't. It's not like how we were, they just don't get the same amount of opportunities to learn to edit.
I suppose it's edit assistant now is pretty much just a lot of data management and getting moving files.
Yeah, and that's it, and that's, which is unbelievably important, and have to concentrate on. But as a result, they don't get to
actually edit.
Practice the art, which is hard for them. So I was lucky. So that's how I started, and I found I had a bit of a sort of knack for it, really.
I was going to say, so when you started as like an assistant trainee editor on that first show, where was the kind of progression there? So you went from assistant editor, and where was the career path from there?
Well, and it's not a steady career path. So I was an assistant for an incredibly long time. I would have done the Caslets in about 2000, and I probably didn't edit. Critical was 2015. So I was like 15 odd years as an assistant. It's a long time as an assistant. But it was kind of like doing an architecture degree, I think. Because by the time I finally got to it, when I finally edited, I'd been cutting so much. And part of it's down to I wasn't confident enough in myself to push myself forward and all those sorts of things. I left the industry for a little bit because I got married and had kids on the way and thought I better do a proper job, but I was useless at it, so I came back. And all those sorts of things. So it was a very long process, but I realized once I got to become an editor, I think my trajectory once I became an editor was a lot quicker because I knew so much, because I've been editing for effectively 15 years. So I
just not getting the credit or the chance at the
and doing editing everywhere. So when the time came to edit, I had so much sort of editing background that it felt easy. I don't know why I've been scared of it for so long, because the moment I started editing, it was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think I found that with my first job. I remember when I went to my place and I got my first job on the ships, and it was they were using Final Cut Studio, but we've been using Avid at uni.
Yeah.
And I literally had one morning's brief training and scribbling some notes from a friend who knew Final Cut. This was the old Final Cut Studio as well back in the day. And it was go on board, and it's like, right, here you go. And it was sink or swim. Like, I literally had to turn the edit round pretty much as soon as it had been filmed and get it on TV the same day. And then, I mean, this is hilarious, my friend. My boss got fired 2 weeks in, and it took him a month to replace him. I hadn't even learned how to master a DVD at that point, and so I had like the template there, and I saw all the links. And I was like, we're in the middle of we was in the middle of Alaska at this time. I'm just like on the phone to the bosses in Los Angeles. You got to take into account the time differences as well, and also the fact that you're in the middle of the ocean. And so your best and simplest way of getting help at that time was to try and email another ship who was on the same time zone as you and ask one of the other editors who might have had a similar issue and all that. So, I mean, it's all about getting chucked in at the deep end now. It's kind of like, and I had a couple of people I worked with who were sent to me, and I had to get rid of one of the guys within 2 weeks because he blatantly lied on his CV. He couldn't edit. Because he reckoned he'd worked with James Cameron and he'd worked on, so we all look up his IMDb page and his name's on there, but he's on there as a camera rigger. He's not an editor. He's not a camera person. And when he went out and shot, we saw his stuff and was like, all right, yeah, you definitely can't shoot. But, you give and I think it's about attitude as well. It's like, if you'd been a bit more, we was like, okay, do you need a hand? What do you want? Let us help you. Do you want us to sit in with you, or do you want to do it yourself? And then just give us a shout if you need what works best for you.
Yeah.
And he would sit there for, I think it took him, he sat there for 8 hours on a drinks demo that took half hour to film, maybe 10 minutes of footage from the half hour. And usually it's a 2-minute edit that we turn around within about an hour. And 6 hours later, I'm still looking at the guy and he's barely done 30 seconds of it. And I'm just thinking, okay, this is not good. So like I say, you have to get into it, don't you?
Yeah, and I think I was the opposite. I could edit, but I was so terrified of sitting with a director and editing. I think I was the opposite of your friend. You have these people who are unbelievably confident, say they can do things even though they can't. I was the absolute opposite of that. And then
Which I
finally, when I
suppose
got
is a good thing to be though, because you've got the skills, right? It's just having
yeah,
that opportunity to actually know, like you say, in the self confidence to go, no, I can do this, so let me do
yeah,
it.
yeah, but it just took a bit of time. So, and I think I then suddenly started editing at a time when TV kind of exploded. You know, in the last 7 or 8 years or 5 years or so, when streaming's exploded, and you know, there's so much work about now. So it seems my trajectory roughly came at the right time. You know, to get work, and there's work about, and interesting and fun work and all that sort of stuff. And you
Yeah,
just get lucky. It's luck. All
definitely.
of it is unbelievable. All of it's luck.
I mean, yeah. When I applied for 2 jobs when I was out of uni for a little bit, and one of them was for a camera studio op for a home shopping network in Birmingham, and the other one was a cruise line job. And I was like, I just need to get a full-time job. Whatever gets back to me first, that's what I'm going to go for. I was going to say, as
Yeah.
an edit, I've always wondered what makes a project run smoothly in post, and what makes an edit a dumpster fire and bane of your life. You know, you obviously don't have to name projects, but you know, for the best projects you've worked on, you know, the one you've enjoyed working on the most, is it down to the footage you're working with, or is it the clarity of vision and the project and the showrunners? And again, for the worst project, is it the lack of organization, or you know, you're getting notes all the time from producers that are going against what the other person's saying, and you're just reversioning and reversioning? So if you start with what the best one I think you worked on is.
Yeah, well, do you know what the best thing in terms of enjoyment would be? You know, actually, this I've enjoyed lots of different. Like I love Critical because it was with a guy called John East, director, who gave him a star, who I work with lots now, and he's a wonderful sort of guy. And it was like the best director to have as a first time as an editor. He's brilliant, and he's generous, and a nice guy. So that was brilliant because of that. And Jed, you know, I mean, it was innovative and different, and it was just an amazing thing to start on. And Jed Mercurio's writing's amazing. And I think that's the key, actually. I think if I go to what makes something smooth and work, you have to start with the script, and the script has to be decent. So like when you first read Phoebe Waller-Bridge's first episode of Killing Eve, it was like the best script I've ever read in my life, probably until I read the first episode of Extraordinary, coming back to it. But like the first episode of Killing Eve, you just read this going, God, I want to work on this show. And then you think, well, there's levels of layers then, isn't it? Because then you think, okay, well, who are they going to get to be in it? So I remember hilariously the Villanelle character, once I read it, everyone was going, well, who's going to be Villanelle? Who's going to be Villanelle? And they said, oh, it's this actor called Jodie Comer. And I sort of said, well, I've never even heard of Jodie Comer. And they said, well, she's been on my, My Fat Diary, and she'd just done something else on BBC, which she was great, but I hadn't seen it. So I was like, sort of going, what's she going to be like then? You know, because this is an extraordinary character. And I literally remember the first day of Rushes when I watched her. It was a scene where she, if you know it, she's in the first season, she sort of celebrates Constantine's birthday by putting a beard on and dancing around the flat as a scene. And that was the first time I ever saw her in Rushes. And you just watched it and you just went, Jesus, she's off the charts. She's just, you know, all her non-verbal stuff, that's what I'm looking for. Her instincts for the camera and everything were just phenomenal. So then that's in place, and you've got Sandra Oh in place. You've got Constantine in place. You've got Fiona, you know, so you add in a good script onto really good performers, you know, actors, and then you get the directors come in, and then they start doing some stuff with it. And so it's those, but it does start from a decent script attracting the right people in, and then it gets a bit scary for the editor, because you think, oh, actually, this is all looking really good. It looks amazing. The acting's brilliant. The script's great. I can only mess this up now. Do you mean? You think, God, I don't want to be the person at the end of the line. But so, yeah, I'd say that for me. I've enjoyed all my jobs. The Last Kingdom was amazing. Loads of them amazing. But I'd say Killing Eve would probably be the one I enjoyed most. Yeah, because it was just an amazing. Every time you got something, it was amazing.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a superb show. I mean, it's funny actually. You got a mini link to our, because we don't have many guests on our show. You're our first kind of like major guest, and then our first actual guest was is a friend he's an author. He's a former copper who's become a crime author, and I said to him, well, I'm not going to ask you about your book. I'm going to ask about if it was a TV show or movie, who would you have in the cast? And the first person he wanted to be the lead detective goes Jodie Comer because of Killing Eve.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she is, and since she's a generational actor. She is one of those people that, you know, you see now on stage, as you know, as well. She's just a one in a lifetime performer. And next to Sandra, who is amazing and all that,
Yeah.
and so once you get that, and once you get like the writer of Phoebe Waller-Bridge as well, it's a, they're pleasant and they're joyful to do, but you don't learn as much in those jobs.
Okay, interesting. So jobs where you know, great script, great actors, everything's running smoothly.
Yeah,
Like
I
you say,
mean,
you can only mess it up at the worst. They're like everything's there in front of you. So getting on to then what's, you know, a worse bad job. And again, you don't have to name any names, but just an example of certain elements that
um,
make an edit a bit of a nightmare.
the result of not having a good script is that you then have chaos. So when you don't, you know, do you know what I mean? So if it doesn't work, if the script doesn't work, and if, you know, things aren't coherent and hang together, and directors talk about it all the time, and they haven't got enough you know, haven't got time to prepare, and you'll be talking to the directors about the script when you meet them, and you say, well, this doesn't quite, does it? And they said, yeah, I know, we're going to get that sorted, don't worry, we're going to get it sorted. And then you get to filming and it's not sorted, and the problem's still there. And then you talked about sort of endless notes and stuff, and I think endless notes then come from the fact predominantly that people go, well, we don't really know what to do with this. So that's where the sort of problem stems from, is that it's not working, and you're then trying to force it to make it work. And I always said that you sort of end up to sort of like street fight editing, in the sense that you're then trying, you know, because you get people coming in and say, well, can we make the scene about this? And you go, yeah, but that wasn't scripted as that, was it? And said, no, but I think this will. And so then you go into these sort of really weird edits where you are scrabbling around looking at all materials to make a different story, or a different,
From
you
what
know,
was originally intended.
from what was originally intended.
Yeah.
So then you're sort of scouring all the sort of mid shots and mid close-ups and stuff to look at every little minutiae of the actors to think, oh, actually, they do look like they're a bit more miserable there, even though they're meant to be in a happy. So it's that sort of stuff. So, but that comes about, I think, when the script hasn't come together. So
Okay.
that I think is. I mean, but I was on one particular job which I am definitely not going to name, but I was on it for a year, and it was a sort of fantasy. Yeah, it was sort of a fantasy show, and but it didn't have enough money to make, you know, for its aspiration on the page. It didn't have enough money to make what they wanted to make, and it always, so as a result, it was always falling short. But what I learned more from that job in that year than I've ever learned through the rest of my time. And I learned about dealing with people and dealing with execs and being honest and trying to be honest, and all those sorts of things. So it was a training, a boot camp, an amazing boot camp. Even though it was sort of 10 months of utter misery, it's probably been the best thing I've ever done, because it did set me up for the rest of my career, and you know, the do's and don'ts and stuff, really.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's really important when you're on a shoot sometimes. I mean, I've been on some shoots that are absolute nightmares, and especially when you get footage back. I mean, I had a shoot a few years back, and you know, I got 2 hard drives full of about 4 terabytes worth of footage. Cameras, you know, cameras weren't marked, sounds was all over. There's no camera notes included, no sound notes included. It took me 2 weeks just to sync up the order of what the stuff was from
Yeah.
what happened on this day, how many cameras were on this scene. I didn't have any of that information on it. And it was just like you say, and it was just, but when it came to the next season of that show, I was like, right, I'm prepared this time. And then it kind of got to the stage where I ended up going onto the shoots because I'd made enough fuss in the edit room saying, well, if you want it done quicker, have me there so I can actually help. I know what all the issues are with the shoot. Let me go on. I've produced in the past. Let me go on a set to help. And also to back up the footage and make sure I've got everything named right at the end of the day. So I was doing card runs myself. So
and you learn from it. So the first one you learn from. So all of it is, as hard as these jobs are, they're constant learning processes, which hopefully, if not make you avoid stuff, I think it makes you realise things that are coming along. So you start to, you recognise maybe a bit earlier down the road if something's issues are there and what you can do. But it was an experience.
So to wrap a bow on that one, what is the most amount of times you've had to revise an edit?
Oh,
so how many times you can, you put final version on it and then you've got like another 20 versions of it after that.
When you edit drama, you obviously we do what we call the assembly as we're going along. So you assemble each scene the day after it's shot, and you accumulate the episode whilst they're filming. So you have what's really interesting, you have these really fantastic scenes and you think they're fantastic, but when they become part of the whole episode and you start reviewing the episode as a whole, as an edit, they then can change what you want from them. The rhythm of it suddenly doesn't feel right when it's part of that whole. So then you are constantly revising sort of edits to get them right. I'm just trying to think of a scene in which it took me ages to know. I'll tell you a scene that really took me a long time to get right. And this is partly because everything about it was great. I did the end of Desperate Times episode in Killing Eve. There's a bit where Villanelle looks at Eve, should I say, in the mirror, and they're both looking at each other. And it's just two shots. They actually filmed the shots of Jodie looking in the mirror when they were in Amsterdam. So they filmed that the week before. So they just did this amazing shot. They just slowly push in on her. And we were looking at it, and we had loads of music. So because we had such an amazing music supervisor and stuff, we would always go, if we were in Holland, we'd say, can you get as much decent Dutch music as we like? We tried to sort of place it in the country, the music. And we got this amazing cover of, I think it's Angel of the Night or something, in Dutch. And I literally just put it on the one shot to look at it. And it was beautiful. It just worked. It was absolutely stunning. So then the director, I sent it to the director and she had a look, and then she came back in because she was filming the opposite parts in the UK 2 weeks later. And she came back in and she looked at it and she went, oh, okay. And she came in and she said, oh, I know what I want to do now. And we had these two shots of basically, you've got Eve then looking through a double glass sort of mirror window in an interview room. And she's looking at herself, and Villanelle's looking at herself. They're literally just two shots coming together. And I swear to God, it took me a whole day to cut this thing. Because the timing of it, just with the music and everything. And again, it was the performance was so amazing and everything that I just didn't, I was agonizing to get it right. And it took me forever. And I must have cut that. God, I must have, God knows how many versions I did of it. I probably, do you know what I mean? In a day, I probably, and then sort of going, oh, no, this is rubbish. It's not working, it's working. I would say that was the hard, and it was just two shots.
Just two shots.
Literally two shots, and just timing them, and then getting little moments when they look, and trying to get some sort of meaning to hit the music at the time, that's probably the one I still think about. I haven't watched it in years, but I think if I watched it again, I'd probably still go, oh God, or something. So that one really.
Okay, yeah. I mean, saying about music to the scene. I mean, for me, one of my favourite editing montages in all of film, is the very end of Richard Kelly's Donnie Darko, where they have that cover of Mad World by Gary Jules, and the camera just pans over every character, but the lyrics in the song sync up perfectly to each character's arc at that point in the story. And that's what I think is really good editing, when you're watching a song used in a show, and it's not just in there because it's a good song or it helps with the pace. The lyrics in the song are also backing up what you want to tell with the story of the show as well.
You just hit moment. When it hits a moment and it just resonates on the cut. Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever. It's the most fun ever in editing. I mean, and you said you went to see Tarantino, didn't you?
Yeah, just last
A
weekend.
couple weeks
Yeah.
ago. I mean, I think, the reason not consciously at the time, the reason I went to see at university when I was doing the other degree that I never did anything with, and they had a film club and they were showing Reservoir Dogs, and my mate sort of said, "Do you want to come and look at it? It's in university?" And I can remember watching Reservoir Dogs and suddenly going, "Oh my God, you can do this!" And you know what I mean? You can conscious for something just going, "This is amazing. This music is amazing, and it's working with pictures is amazing." And I didn't then think, "Oh my God, how do you do that for a job?" It just stuck with me, and then years and years later, I sort of found myself in this position where I get jobs where I can do that.
I think with the music thing, you've said, I listened to one of your interviews you did before, and you were saying about the rhythm that you need and being musical as an editor. Now, I completely agree. I'm a failed guitarist myself. When I was 17, I wanted to be a rock star. And then I kind of got into doing videos for bands later on, rather than like local bands where I live around the time. And that was kind of how I got into the video side of things. And, working at McDonald's part-time, bands clearly not going to make it. And then I started doing a 1 night a week film studies course. And the lecturer was like, "Look, your stuff, you should think about doing the full BTEC at the time." So it was 2 years of, Monday to Friday. But there was, 12 of us on the course? 2 years. So the amount of hands-on experience we got with kit and just being shown all this amazing American early 90s, cinema. So, it's like Tarantino, it was Kevin Smith, Clerks is one of my all-time favorites. Richard Linklater stuff like Dazed and Confused and all that kind of stuff. Coen brothers, getting into all that kind of Robert Rodriguez, and all learning how he'd made his films on a shoestring and all that kind of stuff. And that's what kind of got me into doing it, and then deciding to go off to uni myself and do it after all that.
The music, I was terrified of music. It happened very, really quickly. One of the things that stopped me being an editor at first was I was terrified of music, because we do sort of, editors on drama will do what they call temp scores. So it's hilarious. So that they'll borrow, shall we say, scores from from Hans Zimmer and stuff like that, and everyone. And you always get trends. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, everyone was putting the soundtrack to Joker on their temp scores for their dramas. Do you know what I mean? And they could be anything, but that's any excuse. So, but I was initially very scared of that, the music side of it, and then I threw myself into it and found I just loved it, actually. Because I just, again, it's about getting it right and wanting to shape and mold it and get it right. And I think I was a bit scared of it at first, but then music sort of came. I had certainly with King Eve and Extraordinary, all those shows. I started hitting shows where we were using sort of commercial music in a big way, and that was brilliant. It was just, it is still for me the greatest fun ever when cutting stuff.
So in our episode where we reviewed Extraordinary, I mentioned how great the song choices were and just how perfectly they were cut to each scene. And I wanted to know, as the editor, do you get to pick the songs, or are the songs, especially for this show, it felt like some of them were definitely put in the script, or was it music supervisor picks them, or, is it someone else who picks them? Who comes up with the choice at the end?
Well, the Extraordinary's got it's an interesting story about the music. They weren't, for starters, they weren't in the script, but a lot of them came from a playlist by Emma Moran, who's the writer.
Mm-hmm.
So it started off, what it principally started with was the exec producers from Sid, Gentle, who made it, said to us, "We don't want you to use generic comedy music." They said, that sort of plinky plonky comedy, here's a joke, here's a thing, we don't want you to use that. None of that can be in, like I said to you before about the temp score, when we put these temp scores onto shows to show people what it will be like. So they said, we don't want that. So we all were sort of left with, okay, that's kind of tricky, because when you start to listen to comedy music for stuff, it is fairly generic, actually. It is very much like, although it's great, it is quite plinky plonky and stuff. So we thought, well, okay. And we'd also been talking, because Toby MacDonald, who's the director of the first 4 episodes. He did the first 4, yeah, first 4. He watched the show. He was quite influenced by a show called, I think it's called Shane, which was on Amazon, which is sort of like a story of a sort of 17 or 18-year-old sort of drifter. And although they didn't use commercial tracks, they used the score was very much sounded like just commercial music. And it was also very indie, sort of indie film looking. And I think he wanted it to be extraordinary, not just to be sort of a sitcom, but it to be sort of have an indie sort of feel to it and a look to it as well. So we kind of discussed the music, and we always sort of thought, well, you know, it would be great, wouldn't it? But didn't think much of it because we didn't have a sort of much of a budget at all for music at the time. And so coupled with the guy saying, well, we don't need to use comedy music stuff, like we started saying, well, let's just put some tracks in to get an idea and all that sort of stuff. And it quickly came about. So different people brought different songs to it. It became quite eclectic. So I bizarrely had if you remember episode 3, where the guys had the interview for the superhero for his vigilante gang. Well, bizarrely, before, you know, in a way Spotify throws up things, I had about a month before we started shooting this, an old Julian Cope track come up onto my Spotify, and I can't remember what it's called now, which is the song I used, and I just used to. I had a little Spotify thing saying Extraordinary. Adam Moss, who's the other editor, Carly, I think, did. The directors did. Emma had this amazing wealth of music. So everyone had these little bits of music everywhere. And just so Adam would come in and say, oh, look, I've just fitted this to this, because it kind of, when we'd watch it, go, God, it's, you know, like we're talking about, it's bloody amazing, Adam, and all that. So it sort of was never kind of intended. It was just something to fit, to get an idea, because we wanted a contemporary feel to it, and we wanted a different feel to it. But then we started jumping about, you know, like Emma had some amazing tracks, but then like we had little moments where, you remember when the cat touches
the first Gordon, yeah, and the standoff between the cat, we sort of, we put that in, and on one of these playlists was not the track we then got, but it was like this really heavy American hip hop track, and for some reason we just thought, God, it'd be quite funny to see what that would look like, of, you know, a sort of standoff with a cat trying to touch someone for an orgasm. Why don't we put a heavy American hip hop track to it? And we tried it, and it was just like, God, almost like it was made for it. And then with that one was interesting, because then that one was an extraordinary amount of money, and that's where Catherine Greaves, who's a music supervisor, came in, and her team, because they would then say, well, no, there's no way in the world we can afford that, but try this. And on that one, the track that they actually found was better than the one we had before. So they would then come in and say, well, no, you can't do that, but what about this? And we'd go, God, yeah, that's good as well. So it kind of, and it was still going along kind of that we were fitting them with the view that we get, and we did have a composer. We had an amazing guy called Will, I can't remember names, Will Gregory. Is it Will Gregory? He's one of the founding members of Goldfrapp. Oh, wow.
And he, yeah, do you know what I mean? And like Felt Mountain was, and is still one of my most favorite albums. I bored him so badly the first time I met him about Felt Mountain that he probably thought I was a lunatic. He'd probably take a restraining order out on me or something. But so he was good. He did the music, and so he did the amazing piece of music when she comes home and she lies down on the bed at the end of episode 1, and we realise that she's actually talking to her dead father. And that was his music. So within it, there was composed stuff, but we just kept sort of finding bits of music to fit. And then you know, Adam came up with some amazing stuff, because he's a lot younger than me and cooler. So he'd come up with tracks. I'd go, and Emma is, you know, and all of them. So I was the one that sort of go, oh, why don't we put Nights in White Satin or something like that, just showing my age. But it seemed, I don't know, it seemed to work, and it seemed to come together. And then people kept talking in our cuts that we were sending off to people. People kept talking about the music, and then that's, you know, they worked out a way for us to use it. it just sort of evolved.
It's such an eclectic mix of music in it as well. It's not any one particular genre.
No,
It's
no.
all over the place. And yet, I mean, I say I'm in my 40s, I'm in my mid 40s now myself, and I'm like a pure 90s, alt rock grunge guy. That's my like era of music. And I always bemoan there's never any sort of new good bands. You kind of, I think once you hit 40, you only listen to stuff from when I'm one of those people where you don't get that many new bands or that make an impression on you, I find.
Man.
And I was listening to the soundtrack. I was like, I've got to go and look at the Spotify playlist for this show because there's so much good stuff on it that I've never heard of these bands. I mean, I was going to say, I've got a thing about Wet Leg. You had them in it, and that must have been put in ages ago, right? Before they blew up, because literally a week or two after the show came out, that's the week they won the Grammy. Because I remember watching the episode going, oh, that's a really catchy song. I wonder who this band are. I looked them up. Oh, never heard of them, but they've just won 2 Grammys in the States last night.
My wife is pretty clear that she told me about Wet Leg. Because so I'm going to stick with that she told me about Wet Leg. And I'm quite happy to defer because I didn't know who they were. And it was that in episode 3 I use it for Mummy, Daddy, Look at Me is the bit with the degree and stuff. And that was kind of a lot of the time it was just about sort of rhythmical stuff. But then like you said before, when you listen back, the lyrics kind of fitted their 20-something dilemmas and the lifestyle comedy side of it. They just seemed to kind of work. I think it was driven predominantly, first of all, by the rhythm and stuff. The other one I sort of really loved was the bit when Jizzlord, I can't believe I used this word, as everyone does as a character. Jizzlord goes to the chemist to find the tampons. There you go. There's a sentence I didn't think I'd say. And there's that track in there, which I'd never heard before. And I'd listened to it. And then it became a bit of competition with everyone because everyone's going, oh, I'm going to try and nick that track before anyone else gets hold of that track so I can use it in my episode and all these sorts of things. So it became like I'm desperately jealous of Adam Moss and Jen, who did an amazing job on directing 5, 7 and 8. She did the episodes on. In episode 7, they had the Heart song, which was scripted because you couldn't have done that scene without scripting.
Yeah, you needed that for the sequence.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I remember walking past their cutting room every day being the most jealous person on earth because they got to cut to Heart and stuff. And then Jen came up with the one sort of spoiler alert when Jizz and Thingy kiss at the end. Jen Sheridan had the track for it, and she sort of the director, and she came in and she said, "Oh, I've got an idea of a song I'd really like to use," and just listened to it and just went, "Oh, it's just amazing." So they just came from everywhere, and they all seemed it in a really eclectic, weird way to slot in to the show, really.
Again, one of my favourite ones was you got the White Stripes, We're Going to Be Friends, at the end of episode 5, the Jen show.
Yeah.
And of course, that song is counterpoint to what's just happened because the song's We're Going to Be Friends, but they've literally just had the big fallout and aren't talking to each other. And so you listen to it and you're thinking, but it's great because it's kind of already subtly implying that, okay, well, we know they're best friends. We know they're going to become friends again later on. So, and the song was already kind of hinting at the reconciliation that they would have by the end of I think it was only one episode they were kind of mad at each other for anyway, weren't they? But again, it's just, instead of going for the obvious lyric scene match up there, it's hinting at what's to come. So, I mean, I go really deep into some of the way the music goes in with the scenes and that, but I just thought that's a really clever use of it there.
Well, and also I think that one, we watched Napoleon Dynamite with the kids because it's on Napoleon Dynamite as well. So I think there was a little, again, going back to that indie thing as well with it, trying to make it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was a little hark back to American indie and it sort of fitted there and it fitted in the lyrics. But sometimes you chose them because of just that guitar at the start.
Yeah.
It's just hard, and it just hit that moment perfectly, and it did all the sort of legwork for you to help you, to raise the scene, really.
At the start of every episode, you'll have like a quick blast of the song. There'll be like a brief bit of a scene, then a quick blast, like maybe 10 seconds of a song. Then you go into the titles. and then you'll go into another scene, but that song will come back in again quite quickly another couple of times, and it was almost like, who come up with the idea? It was because obviously it's the same in almost every episode.
I think it was some of it will be to do with like the abrupt ending of it in some respect. Sometimes was practical because it was quite hard to finish, to bring it to an end. So it was sort of a sense of sometimes you go, I don't know, we'll just stop it then. But we stopped it and then put a sound effect or a movement of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think one, like a light switch going on. So you made it, you brought some of the sound effects in to help the stopping of the track.
Yeah, to bridge
I
it.
think to bridge it. And then I think with the wet, say for instance, Wet Leg Again, we brought that in a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because for that one, it felt like the first time we used it, we hadn't told the whole story of the song yet, and it warranted a bit more rather than going to something else. It just felt like we could continue it. So I don't think none of it was designed in the sense of
every episode must have this.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It sounds like it was much more natural.
Yeah, and I think then I'd see things that Adam were doing or things that Carly was doing in terms of the way they used it, and you go, well, that's clever, that's smart, and maybe it sort of evolved in that sense because we were feeding off each other and looking at each other and going, well, I love the way you've done that. It works, and so we maybe unwittingly started having some grammar to it, to how we use them without actually saying.
Yeah, it's almost subliminal, like you say. You were being influenced by each other's work on it.
Yeah, and we were just, it was. We all worked closely together. It was a sort of close knit. It was sort of, it was a good thing to work on, and I think that we all got excited by it. So, and barring jealousy, you're excited when you saw their cuts because they were brilliant, and their work is, they're two very talented, crazy editors, and it was fun to watch and see that. I've got to remember the name of this because I promised myself I'd name this singer. I think it's Caroline Rose. Now, she did the track. I tell you the track she did. She did one which was when the girls jump about, when they're in the recording studio, and he says £300,000, and it's that track. That was one of hers. And also when episode 1, when she comes back in to the room and your man's just got out the window and flown off. I think it's Catherine Rose. Got to check that. Sure it is. Her music as well was just like, again, it was just sort of, there was sort of some Americana feel about it as well. There was sort of slightly indie, but not, because, it just, all of it. And then Emma's tracks just blew us away. And what we didn't realize was that the cast had been listening to these tracks on set. So we didn't realize that, we knew it circulated as Emma's extraordinary sort of music, but I didn't realize that they were also all listening to, because then when the actors sort of saw it, they said, we were listening to that. It's kind of there. Yeah, it became as part of the soul and set and part of the music.
It's so good. Like, it sounds so like such a great atmosphere when the music's permeating every aspect of the show as you're making it, and like you say, from picking the songs and the cast listening to the songs that you then end up using in the show is just I'd never think that in a million years.
Well, we didn't even, it was just strange, and it all, like I said, it all stemmed from the fact that they really said don't use generic comedy music,
and you clearly didn't.
Well, we didn't. No, but it was.
And I think the show is massively impressive because of that. I think that's one of the best things we all liked about the show was just the music in it, because it works so well, and it gives the pacing to the scenes, doesn't it? It makes it kinetic in places. It slows it down when it needs to. It's all perfectly where it needs to be.
But again, I'll go back to our early conversation though. Without that, without that script, and without that, that sort of just unbelievable sort of comic genius, it's a combination of everything. It's never something on its own. It is everything feeding off itself when things go well and it works. But and four central performances, which were just
Yeah.
You know, people, again, I didn't know any of them as actors, hadn't seen any of them. And you see them come onto the screen and the way they interacted together, you're like going, God, they are amazing. You know, so it just, everything sort of slotted into place, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a similar position. When I watched the show, the only person I think I'd heard of in it was, is it Siobhan McSweeney, who played Father Michael in Derry Girls. And then I said, oh, Irish Girl is the lead in the show, written by an Irish girl. I was like, okay, so it might have a bit of that to it. And honestly, it was the funniest thing I'd seen since Derry Girls when I was watching it. And that opening scene with Jen's really horrific job interview, that's kind of that, and like the immediate aftermath, that just told you all about what the tone of the show was going to be in that opening bit, didn't it?
Yeah, distilled in the second, in the writing and the performance, you know exactly what, but done in a way which was so brilliant. So you know, sometimes those things in dramas feel horrible. It's like a really bad setup of this is the world, but it was handled and written so brilliantly and then performed so, you know, beautifully. And you know, and a really great deadpan response from, you know, the interviewer as well. That all of it just, you know, it's a goal straight away, isn't it, in the first minute? Yeah. And then you hit outside, and we've got all that sort of stuff going on. It just said, this is the show. If you fancy it, come on in. And then it's...
I was pitching it to people in my office, saying, look, you got a character in it called Jizzlord. That's all you need to know. Just. And it got people watching it, and like, and I had to sum it up and say, well, look, it's a superhero show, but it's not. For me, it felt like a classic British flat chair show, and and I love just that most of the powers were really crap in it. You know, they was that whole idea of it just, and I just love Jen's journey. And in fact, that's kind of the questions. I got a few questions from my other co-hosts from the pod, David and Jose, and one of them was David wanted to know, what was the time frame for editing on the show like this? Now, you mentioned earlier that you're editing pretty much daily as you're getting the rushes in. So how long would you have to cut an episode from start to finish?
Oh, crikey.
I think there's quite a bit more to it than that, by the sounds of things.
No, it wasn't. It was quite a quick turnaround for a show. So I'm just trying to work out in my head the timescale. They started filming in, I probably got this horribly wrong, and somebody would say, it's about October, November, and we finished kind of everything by June, July in terms of the edit.
Mm-hmm.
So they filmed the first. What would happen is, because they wanted a quick turnaround, they filmed the first block. I joined it a bit later because I was finishing off another show. So I came in and joined it at Christmas, and they had about another month of filming on the first 4 episodes. So then we did those, and then we had one standalone episode in the middle, and then we did the last 3. And whilst somebody was assembling the last 3, we were fine cutting the first 4. So we sort of leapfrogged each other, and then went in to the last 3, and then fine cut those. So it was pretty quick turnaround. That doesn't really answer the question at all. Sorry.
Oh no, it gives us a bit more of an idea of the process.
Generally, it's for, say, for instance, I'm just trying to give you a ballpark. It's for 2 50-minute, say, episodes. Oh, actually, let's think about killing it. 2 40-odd minute episodes of that took about 6 weeks to film, and then another 7-8 weeks to finish on top.
Oh wow! So you are there. So you are there when they're filming it as well, like doing the dailies.
Yes. So every day we work a day behind. So we're constantly bringing scenes together the day after they filmed. That's what. So by the time the director gets back, you've hopefully got everything ready as this big lump of wood to start carving with the director, and then you get into producers' cuts, exec producers' cuts, network cuts, and all that sort of stuff. So,
okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, that was another one. Yeah, Jose had a question saying, were there any other smaller characters cut from the show? And I think he's thinking about, was there any alternate members of Cash's vigilante gang in the auditions? Because again, that was a great sequence with, like Magnet Girl, the guy who can summon fish, and
no, that was they were all kept in. They're all brilliant.
What I was going to say as well, you can't really that had to be probably quite specific, because you've got certain effects need to go into that as well, don't they? So
yeah, it was one of the best bits of sort of filming for me was the guy who's quick. I did work on the show. I know I can't remember any of the names, but I did work on it.
Yeah, I can't remember his name actually.
When he first comes in and he goes like that, it had help from our amazing visual effects people, but the predominance it was done in camera, and we just sped it up. And like, so it literally was, you do a shot where the papers blow away and stuff like that, and we just brought it together. So it was so cleverly done by Toby, the director, and we assisted. We obviously smoothed out and assisted it with visual effects, but you could have probably got away with what we had just in camera. So they all remained in because they were all brilliant. And yeah. I think that's possibly one of my favorite bits, amongst lots of favorite bits. But I just love their first meeting. And then I love Ep 4 as well, when they go on their first job as well. I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favourite bits later on. I like Cash's character so much because initially when you meet him, you're being a dick to your girlfriend all the time, and she's definitely going to leave you, which is where it heads to. But he still manages to the performance is so good. He just manages to stay on side of you, just having sympathy for him enough still. And then that episode where she's trying to break up with him and he's using his power again and again to try and stop it. It's like a really sad Groundhog Day because he's trying to do the opposite. He's trying to use it so he can get out of the situation.
Yeah. And that was another one where the song, showing my age, but I'd listened to Say Hello, Wave Goodbye by Soft Cell for some reason about a month ago before. And I just suddenly thought, God, that'd be, if we could get that or use that, that'd be fantastic. So that was one of my few ones that I thought of. But like I said to you, all of them came from everyone else as well.
Yeah, I mean, you said when you're just saying about the cast. I mean, I having not seen any of them. I mean, I forgot that, is it Luke Rollison who plays Jizzlord?
Yeah,
like the physical performance he gave, like for being a cat to a man, and just I mean, again, there were so many really subtle and obvious bits where you're seeing it, like his actions are like a cat. So he's like, he's slowly creeping into the frame and trying to and it was again and again. Carrie Oxenden, when she was possessed by all the other voices, again, like the physicality in the performances of both of them was superb.
Absolutely extraordinary. Her taking over the characters was breathtaking. It's just a stunning piece of acting. It's just so clever, and it's why it works is because again, one of my favorite things is Ep 7 when she's being seduced by, is it Charles II or whatever it is? Yeah. It's just utterly spellbinding. It's so good.
Yeah.
And and it's one of those things, if you look at it in the script, you think that could go so horribly wrong. Do you know what I mean? In the wrong hands, all of these things could fall flat and be terrible. And they just delivered. They were just stunning.
Well, thanks, Dan. I think you've answered all the questions we've had there today. We generally just, review films and talk about stuff we like, but to get a much deeper dive into the process, I mean, it's been fascinating for me to hear about how it actually works on the show at that level.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great. Yeah, I do as well, because and it was a great show. It's a great show to work with. Really good.
Right, well, thanks, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure today, and we'll have to have you back sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Always.
So, guys, I think we all loved hearing about how collaborative the editing process seemed to be in regards to picking the music for the show, from the writer Emma Murren having a playlist for the show, to Dan and the other two editors picking songs, and the directors just walking in and saying, oh, how about trying this song? I think it gives us all hope for getting into the industry one day, right?
Yeah,
maybe it's kind of fun hearing about stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe you more. You like your music more. You could get there, you'd be like, dude, this song will work, and this song will work. And I think we need to get more people like Dan on, because Dan is insightful, man. That insightful knowledge that we're missing out on.
It's just great to find out about the process, because I mean, when we talked about Extraordinary last time on the pod, he was saying, "Oh, the music's really good. I wonder how they picked the songs." And he actually commented underneath, so he'd listened to the episode and commented underneath. So I was like, that means I can probably send him a DM despite not knowing the guy. And yeah, he was like, got back to us and said, "Yeah, do the interview." So it was great. Yeah, it was really good, man.
Slip into some more people's DMs, Neil.
We got a few we got a few slips planned. Right, so finally, let's get on to our extraordinary spoiler section. So I think we all generally enjoyed the show, right? And what I want to do is hear what your guys' pros and cons on the show are, and where you think season 2 of the show is going to go. So I'll start off. For me, going to first base, the script. I mean, it was one of the funniest shows I've seen in ages. The editing, the music, the direction, the performances, they're all top tier in this. I love that almost every character in the show has an arc, even outside the core 4 characters. Look at Gordon's evolution from shy guy who wears a not dodgy at all glove to embracing his role as the cum guy.
Yes.
Also, I was just going to say, the core 4 cast are all superb, despite doing very little beforehand. Mayray Tyers had a minor role in Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, and she's in an upcoming period drama comedy called My Lady Jane, but her character's not the lead, and her character's not even named on the IMDb at the minute for it. Sophia Oxenham as Carrie was probably the biggest profile. She was in Poldark on the BBC. That's like a big Sunday night period drama in the UK, Jose. She was in Doc Martin. She was in the BBC's Dracula, and she had a supporting role in a Netflix show called Cursed, which was a show, I think, about King Arthur kind of thing, but with a female twist. Or was it a werewolf one? I forget. There was a couple of fantasy shows in Netflix over the last couple of years that I watched, and I was like, I don't remember which that one was about. But she was in one of them, and I vaguely remember it from it. Bilal Hasnat, who plays Cash, he had a small role in one episode of Channel 4's prison drama Screwed, but he has a really interesting project in post-production at the minute called Layla, where he plays a lead as a struggling British-Palestinian drag queen who falls in love with a successful gay man called Max. Now, that's about as different as you can get from the character he plays in Extraordinary.
That sounds like an award-worthy...
Already, yeah, that's kind of like...
project, that, yeah.
Yeah. Cash is going to go for his BAFTA straight away. And finally, Jizzlord, Luke Rollerson, has done some short films and had a minor role in a period drama called Becoming Elizabeth. And he had a really small role in HBO/BBC's money drama Industry. And he had the lead in a low-budget uni comedy called Jack, which is not his name, David. It's not his name, Jose. That's the name of his penis, who narrates the film. So I guess he's got a bit of form playing a character called Jizzlord, right?
Yeah, he's going to quickly become a typecast, anything dick-related.
Definitely is, poor guy.
He'll be in something called Foreskin. He'll be in,
Yeah, I definitely see him being in that kind of typecast role for a little while.
He will probably be Jizzlord for
Most
the
of his
remainder
career.
of his career. Yeah. He reminded me a lot of an early... That actor that's now's name I've forgotten. Travels with My Father.
Jack Whitehall.
Jack Whitehall, yeah. Reminded me of an early Jack Whitehall in...
I think he's better than Jack Whitehall already.
You're trying to refer to him as like a character you're going to think of instead of him as an actor. And I think one guy that I came to mind with, it was Stifler from American Pie. You know Stifler, but you don't really know the name of the actor.
Sean
Or at least
William
most
Scott.
people don't.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, with
you
the
guys
exception
are
to the
movie
rule there.
guys. Yeah, but most people, they think, oh, Stifler from American Pie, or at least for a long time. He might be
When
a
he was
little bit
getting work.
outgrown. at that
American
point.
Pie was top. And his death in Final Destination, Sean William Scott, is like
Oh.
iconic.
Right off the top
yeah,
of his
yeah,
head.
yeah. Loved it.
Yeah, he timed that out pretty good.
It's funny, actually, when I was on Twitter earlier today, as most days, and there was someone had reshared a tweet where it said, millennials... Are millennials the current youngest ones, or is there something younger than millennials now?
No,
Kids today.
Gen Z.
Gen
Gen
Z.
Z.
Gen Z, right. So
Yeah.
Gen Z apparently said, we showed American Pie to Gen Z, and they said it was problematic. Yeah, no shit. I mean, it's just of its time,
Yeah,
isn't
some
it?
of the
Sadly.
2000s
It's when
movies.
every comedy had red and white letters on the branding for it. Every comedy.
I went through a phase
Oh,
of
wow.
watching American Pie probably every night for a good,
Wow.
2 or 3 months. To the point where I could quote it, back to you.
That's
I think,
really
didn't
good.
everyone go through a phase like that, where they watched that
No.
film just, a lot?
Not that many times.
Yes. I have a friend who went through a phase watching a worse film, Napoleon Dynamite. He loved that movie so much, and then he made me watch it more than I should have.
Oh.
I don't mind Napoleon Dynamite. It's a cult classic.
It's
not American Pie.
I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not the greatest, and I had to watch it more than I would have liked to.
I think watching it more than you like to was probably what led you on to not liking it. A couple of times.
Yes.
I've only probably seen it 2 or 3 times. So, getting back to Extraordinary, which is a comedy, so we're just about on track still. As Dan mentioned, Carrie's scene where she is channeling and also flirting with Charles II is just a masterstroke of acting. And do you know what it made me think of? It made me, the first time you see Andy Serkis doing the Gollum Smeagol scene, you've got her possessed and then she just...
You stole my idea of talking about that, because I think it really was on par with that. They did a really great job with her going back and forth and editing, and her acting is just really good.
Yeah, I mean, for such a relative newcomer. I mean, as I said when I was running through what they've been doing, the cast, she probably had the biggest profile pre-Extraordinary. I was just going to mention the emotional beats of Carrie letting Jen talk to her dead father through her, and how she takes it away from her when they have their big falling out was a real sort of kick in the guts.
This was one of the big positives for me of the show. So, saying what our positives and cons are for this. This was the biggest positive, was how they balanced the comedy and the emotional aspects of it through Carrie's power.
Yeah.
And Jen getting to talk to her dad. That there was that reveal at the end of the first episode, was it?
Yep.
Where you realise where she's talking to her dad on the phone all the time, and then you realise, oh, it's through her, because you've already established that her power is she can talk to the dead. So, really quickly put it all together that, oh shit, her dad's dead, and that's a proper wallop at the end of that episode. I love those sort of comedies that have that power to be both hilarious and, get you really emotional,
moving at the same time
with one swing. Like Scrubs had it occasionally.
Yeah.
They get you high and laughing and rolling, and then at the end of the day you're bawling your eyes out because Brendan Fraser's dead.
Yeah,
sorry,
you had the exact episode in my head.
Yeah,
same man.
Channeling you guys. No, that's a really good sign of comedy, and I think that's one thing that I've heard with a lot of comedians and it's just dramatic actors. There's a fine line in real life of like being funny and being sad at the same time. So yeah, I think that's why I've seen a lot of interviews where movies have gone like with comedic stars like Jim Carrey. You see them go from really funny movies and then kind of pivot to dramas and do
The
so well.
Majestic, wasn't it? And Majestic was Jim Carrey's big one, where he went from like all the... And I love The Majestic. I think it's a brilliant film. And yet hardly anyone gives it any love.
It's a pretty good movie. I think The Truman Show is the one I was thinking. Oh, who was it? Punch Drunk Love with...
Adam Sandler, yeah.
Adam Sandler. Man, I just blanked on his name for no reason.
And then he did loads of crap again after that, but then he went and did Uncut Gems. And everyone's like, holy shit, he's like awards. So he's got it in him. I just guess he likes hanging out with his friends and not doing anything challenging that much in a while.
Yeah. It's just, I feel like that's why comedians can do drama so well, is it's just like playing things straight.
Well, I think it's probably harder in a way, isn't it? Because if you're a straight dramatic actor, you just deliver. But having to be funny and dramatic in the same scene and do that, like Sophia Oxham does as Carrie, is really good. I mean, I have to mention, when I was going through it for my favourite bits, one of my favourite lines of the whole show is when Jen's having an argument with her sister and she says, "You broke your girlfriend's fanny." And then the follow-up line when she says she finger blasted her ex into the hospital. I mean, wow. Yeah. That is good writing.
As a way to go as well. Like, if you're gonna get to the hospital somewhere, like broken pelvis or whatever, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, but I also want to give a little credit to the actor who played Cash. Bilal Hasna. It's really hard for me to get annoyed by actor or characters like legitimately, like, oh, he's just being an annoying character. But his character actually, I felt like, oh man, I really don't like this guy sometimes. So I got to give him credit for that.
He really walked the fine line between being goofily charming, and you can kind of see what Carrie sees in him, but also he walks the line of being an insufferable, lazy twat a lot of the time to his long-suffering girlfriend, who should definitely do better. As she starts kind of thinking, and that's kind of like the through line of the show. And I think he just about pulls it off. To be fair, I think it's a really tightrope he's got to walk there, and like I love it. And again, that's like right near the end when you have his Groundhog Day style episode where he's trying to stay awake long enough to not get broken up for her. And I think thinking about that scene, that could have been really creepy if the performance was even slightly off, but he nails it, because even after she realizes what he's doing and breaks up with him, she's still like, right, let's put you to bed, give him a cup of tea, and you genuinely feel sorry for him.
Yeah, at that point in the season, the whole time I'm like, man, why doesn't he, like, you saw it once, like early in the season, like I think in the first episode, him use that quick little jump. And I'm like, man, they're really not allowing him to kind of play with this. And then in that episode, I'm like, finally.
And that's why.
I was just been waiting for this. Yeah. It was such a great use. I didn't even catch on either right away.
Because I think you genuinely feel sorry for him when Carrie breaks up with him, despite him totally deserving it. So, and that's what makes that performance so good.
Yeah, definitely. She could totally do better, but you felt those tugged on those heartstrings. Again, it's just another moment where it finally tuned like the balance of drama and comedy.
Now, talking about cons, I don't really have many. I kind of agree a little bit, like we've mentioned before, David, about the Jen and Gislord love story did seemingly come out of nowhere. But having watched the show 4 times now, from start to finish, I think you can see the subtle hints dropped in, which are there on repeat viewings. I mean, I think his unintended bluntness with Jen is kind of what, she's used to people like Carrie always trying to, pussyfoot around her and, not annoy her. And because he doesn't know how to human anymore, he just says the straight truth each time. There's nothing to him. So, like when she sees Flyboy Luke and he doesn't want to be seen with her in public, and then Gislord follows her around like a stray cat. When Jen and Carrie have their big fight, and I think Jen is kind of like the audience in some ways, that also until that kiss happens with them, she just thinks about it kind of like we do, that, oh, well, Gislord, he's just there all the time. And I don't think she thinks of him like that. So I think it's quite layered. You don't really notice it the first time, but on repeated viewings, you can kind of see how they have very cleverly built it in there. You just don't realise it. And you're almost, like I said, the audience we're almost on the same kind of view of it as Jen is, because we're like, oh yeah, that does kind of make sense now, because why else would he be around, to be fair? Some friends have also said, when I was chatting about it in the office, that they said they actually find Jen quite annoying. But I think she needs to be to a point.
She's intentionally annoying, though.
Exactly. She has to act out enough and rebel against the fact that she's kind of torn. And I like that real sort of dichotomy in her character, because half the time she's railing against people who've got powers because she doesn't have them. But then also, she really wants to fit in with everyone else by having powers. So I love the push and pull with her character there. It's really good.
Yeah.
Here's a fun observation. I don't know if you've picked up on with Gislord. He's the male equivalent of the manic pixie dream girl. Don't you think?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, a little weird, a little naive, and very impressionable. And, I guess he's a good-looking dude. So, I think some girls would like that. Or at least, if anything, is just a play on that.
I can see
I'm not saying
I
it's
can
perfect,
see where you
but
went.
yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely elements of it taken from it that you could put onto a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as much as you could, I think, to switch the role from female to male.
Yeah, I mean, I have another positive that I wanted to talk about, which was just the sheer hilarity of some of the powers and the randomness. Of them.
PDF man.
Yeah, like the bloke that could 3D print anything out of his arse.
Magnet Girl.
I really wanted to see more from the fish guy.
Yeah, basically Aquaman. Yeah, that can just summon.
I wanted
fish.
to see him just summon fish because they were hungry or something.
The magnet
still
lady.
not really be useful. The magnet. She had actually pretty good.
And of course, can't forget Gregor, like Cocky Gregor, who was like the Flash, Mysticum, Gordon.
Oh, sorry, is that not okay? Yeah,
I have thoughts about him.
I beg your pardon,
but I want to wait until we talk about. I have thoughts on him, but more in terms of what could happen in season 2.
So the negative for me is, I mentioned it, I think in a previous episode, was the marketing. I felt like the marketing, especially considering it was on Disney Plus, it wasn't very good to begin with. I don't think a lot of people even knew the show existed, aside from places like us that are talking about it. It wasn't very well done in general, but from what limited marketing there was, i.e. like the poster, especially on Disney Plus, it seems very teen comedy, and it is not. It is not like almost like child comedy, like Drake and Josh style thing, and it is very much not that. So if you I can see a lot of parents putting this on for their kids, being like, "Oh, this is a new cool looking TV show about superheroes." Watching the first 30 minutes and being like, "Fucking hell!" First 30 seconds, and being like, "Shit, turn it off! Where's the remote? Where's the remote?" I can imagine that happened in a lot of households. In fact, there was one news article out there that said that this is one for the kids in the newspaper.
No.
So they blatantly not watched a single minute of the show, and they just gone off the poster and been like, one for the kids.
So now let's talk about where we think season 2 of Extraordinary is going to go. So David, you actually first spotted on your first watch through that I didn't, that Jen, upon deciding she was happy and should be with Jizzlord, she just might have gained her power at the same time, which was to take away or deaden other people's powers. Because we notice after she rejects Flyboy Luke, he has trouble flying away. After Jen rejects him for Jizzlord. Now, at the time, first time, I just thought that was like a jokey sexual performance thing where he's rejected, it meant he had performance anxiety and couldn't struggle to fly. But now thinking about it, you could be onto something there, David.
It might be a rejection thing as well. Like that might be in it. It might be through rejection that her power exists, because there's a lot of those things where power only exists through action in the show. So that might be an element of it. I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, you did I even say that? Because I can't remember saying that.
Yes, you mentioned it. I'm sure we go back to the first. Oh no, because we didn't do spoilers on the original chat about Extraordinary. But
no, that's a great observation.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. It could be that she takes other people's powers. It could be permanent. Do they come back, or does she temporarily gain other people's powers? Which, of course, knowing Jen, she would totally abuse.
So Silas type character from Heroes.
Oh God, Sylar.
Or
Is it Sylar,
if you want to go X-Men 3, the little boy who negated all the X-Men's powers.
Yeah, let's talk about our four main characters then and where we think they're going to go in the next series. So Jen. Now, obviously, she's got a lot to deal with. What with Jizzlord having a family's revelation, so that's definitely going to be traumatic for her. But also the continuing will she or will she not get a superpower storyline. I kind of think the second Jen truly gets her power, the show really has to end, because that's what the unique selling point of the show is. That's what makes her. That's her unique character trait. If you are the one person who doesn't have a superpower, well, what if you did? Then the show's hook is gone, maybe. So I kind of feel like it's not going to be a simple path to her getting her powers.
I feel like there might be more like little hints, like so the audience will know what her power is, but she won't. Like through like small hints, and then eventually the reveal will be, she works it out. Oh shit, she does have a power, and then the show will end.
But that'd be like a season-long arc, maybe in season 2.
This is the full.
So I mean, her power wasn't what she thought it was in one of the earlier episodes, which was magic tits and can turn animals into men.
Yes, that was great.
So
I would like
real
that.
Question: do you think it's only going to be 2 series?
I don't know yet. I mean, we're talking about it's a Disney Plus original, but I think it was the first Disney Plus UK original. So they had a lot of faith in it, but obviously it depends. A lot of British shows don't go that many seasons. They kind of
that's what I was wondering.
They make a good impression, and then that's it. And everyone's like, "Oh wow, we should have had more." But you don't really want more because it stays as good as it was.
Yeah,
it depends on popularity, and then it also depends on whether you can get the full cast back every time, because these people are going to go on to bigger and better things most likely. So there's loads of like.
And I feel like even the really big popular shows only still like Fleabag, 2 series, and that was it. So even if it blows up, it's contained into a one main story arc overall with like that show.
I know Phoebe Waller-Bridge did say that she might like to go back to it like 15, 20 years down the road and check in with the character. But for where we are now, that she was done with it, which is a great thing to say. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with Jen in season 2 then, Jose?
Love triangle
with whoever Jizzlord's.
I don't know. So it's difficult for me to say, because sometimes with shows and movies you can kind of tell by the caliber of the actor playing characters what's going to happen. But I don't know British actors, so I don't know if the person playing his wife or even the child, are they to a caliber that you recognize them as a regular actor?
Didn't recognize her.
So then it may be like, maybe it's something like as bad as they just kind of like, oh, that's not going to be an issue, or as good as they just recast, because maybe they were expecting to see the reaction, and if people were excited, then they would have the time to cast someone better. I don't, like Back to the Future 1 and 2 with the girlfriend.
Well, that was she had to leave because I think her mum was sick. The original Jennifer.
Oh shoot! Okay, I didn't know that.
Back to the Future trivia, man. It's one of my things.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah, I think moving on to Jizzlord, like you say, you have that post-credits thing where we find out he had a family, and what kind of obstacle is this going to be for his relationship with Jen in the second series. Was he happily married? Was he divorced? Did he simply vanish? Did they think he was dead? Did his partner mourn? Have they moved on? There's all these questions. To be answered.
Why did he get stuck as a cat?
Yeah, that's what I
want to
know.
Plot point.
That could be connected to stress or like something to do with that, couldn't it? We don't know that. So there's a lot to explore there.
I honestly think it's connected to the person who kept him as a cat.
But they're dead, aren't they?
We never really saw. Yes, but flashbacks are very common in shows. And I honestly think that that's going to be something looked back on, is like, where was he and why was he gone for so long? Because, I mean, I feel like in this show, it's very common for people to be able to shapeshift into animals. But why was he stuck that way to the point that he couldn't remember?
Love to see an episode with no dialogue where he's just a cat for the whole episode. And you catch up on those 5 years in one episode. That would be awesome. Literally, from the moment he becomes a cat. So you could see him perhaps, like we're speculating, like has an argument with his partner, storms out, something traumatic or tragic happens, and he turns into a cat as a way of dealing with it.
I can definitely see that being a thing.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something there, Neil.
A lot of shows try and do something clever like now. Like Only Murders in the Building did the silent episode, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. I can't wait for that to come out.
I'll stop watching that show. But
Yeah.
No, that was... Yeah, because it was one of the characters was deaf. And so a lot of the perspective, I think, was it the whole episode, his perspective?
Most of it, yeah.
Most of it. So that's, I think, a very big, bold move, which I think worked for it.
And I wouldn't mind seeing a cat episode. That's what I want. You heard it here first, folks. We want a Jizz Lord cat episode, where he's just cat all the time. Moving on to Carrie, I feel that her and Cash will eventually get back together, but I think this will be a season of Carrie going on horrific dates and finding new and inventive ways to use her power before Cash finally kind of proves himself again towards the end of the series, maybe.
I hope not.
Yeah, I think...
You hope not?
With the Cash thing. Only with the Cash thing. I like the idea of her being like, maybe going through a sexual awakening and like meeting like Casanova and everything like that.
Well, Louis II again.
Dating all these sort of people, all these...
I mean, do you think Louis II will make a new appearance?
He was popular, wasn't he? You never know. But I'm not quite sure how that would work as a relationship.
Well, I mean, maybe not as a relationship, but I think as a foil for Cash, in a way, because there's times where like...
That would be funny,
Louis
actually.
II.
If, like, she loses control of it at some point and Louis II could take over her body. Or that could be just not even necessarilyLouis II doing that, but losing control of her powers at some point. And
or maybe just the timing
possessing her. Hey, you could have her be a supervillain in that series then. And then that would lead into Cash's crap heroes. In fact, I had a better idea with that, actually. I think Cash, they could go the obvious route, and after getting dumped, he tries to turn himself into a supervillain. But because it's extraordinary, no, he'll be a really crap supervillain. That doing crimes that no one notices. And, he could go really dark, and he could try and Groundhog Day himself and like try and kill himself a bunch of times. But then he just like backs out and rewinds those couple of minutes.
I'm liking your ideas, Neil. You're having a good day with these ideas.
Well, and like I say, I think when you really like a show, you want to explore all the different ways that it can possibly go. I think you need more of Cash's crew clashing with Gregor's team, and maybe you could have Gregor's team turn into the villain team. I also want a lot more of, and she wasn't mentioned a lot, Darcy Porter Kennedy, who plays Ange, Jen's boss at the...
the girl that's...
The little girl.
Yeah. The smoker voice. Yeah.
That is such a remarkable performance, and she was only 14 when she did that role.
Wow. I say we have a small window to take advantage of that opportunity, because 2 years, I think anybody can grow pretty quickly, so... And she's supposed to stay the same age, so that can be pretty tough.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the second series might go down more of a careers aspect for Jen as well, because she never really explore. We only see her in that very first moment where she's got a job interview, and then for the rest of it, she's not really exploring her career. Is she?
We don't know what she's good at, which is nothing apparently. Getting drunk and being really offensive.
Yes,
that's her superpower.
I think she grows up a lot in the second series, honestly.
Nah, she's got to stay. She's got to stay immature. She's got to stay as she is.
I'd love to see her like temporarily get a power, be an absolute dick with it, and then lose it again. Because I think that would be the most Jen on brand thing for it, wouldn't it?
That'd be great.
I would like the idea of her actually being able to steal people's powers briefly and just getting to try them all out. I just think that'd be really clever. Because when that episode where she meets the other girl who has no powers and they become best friends for like a day, and then the girl gets powers and she absolutely fucks her off straight away. I can totally see Jen still doing that herself.
What was that girl's power in the end that she found out?
Teleportation.
Teleportation?
Yep.
Okay.
Here's a fun idea. Last episode of the series, she gets her powers and she accidentally dies because of it. Like, let's say she can fly, but then she flies into a plane. And then that's the end of the series.
Well, that's like Deadpool, isn't it? That's
fucking
the X-Force scene. Yeah, Jose went way too dark with that. You can have Cash do that because he can rewind time 4.5 minutes. I mean, there needs to be something. I'd love to see it where like they up the scale a bit of the what's going on, and like there could be like a major disaster about happening, and Cash has to try and do it. And, you know, there could be something like that, or...
Maybe have him defuse a bomb like 20 times.
Yeah, and just get blown up every time because he's crap at it. And just manage to pull it back each time. So I think that about rounds us off, guys. Although I have one last question. And finally, in honour of PDF Arse Print Man, what would you 3D print from your backside if you could? David?
Ooh. A money machine. Free money. All day, every day, baby. No need to work anymore.
Smelly free money. But
I think you have to print something that's actually printable.
A money machine's like printable. Like surely they've got to come from somewhere. Like a coin dispenser. How about that? Like, you know, like you just
coins. You're not going to be rich from coins, are you?
So you just, you know, you print out a one coin machine.
Yeah, but it's not. It'd be however many you could fit in it. So you get maybe $1,000 tops on it. So that's a terrible idea.
I'd take $1,000.
You have to eat a lot.
I'd take $1,000.
Are you okay? I was about to say, if you were in the show and you like did a cash machine, you just get like a really crap ATM with next to no money in it. A broken ATM.
No pun intended.
I don't
really
know.
Crap.
Really crap. ATM. Like a lightsaber. I don't think you want that coming out your backside either. To be fair. Jose, what would you 3D print?
I have no idea. I keep thinking of cone-shaped items, and that's all that's popping in my head. I mean, have you guys seen Everything Everywhere All at Once? I think of those trophies now.
Everyone does.
A butt plug. That's what I'd have. To stop the power.
Like, the irony.
Yeah.
Well, that went off the rails as expected. When I wrote that question out, I thought they're either not going to know or it's going to be something weird. When I put the post out for this episode, I did also ask for any comments people had on Extraordinary, and one of our new listeners, Molly Sue from the States. I forget where in the States, but you know the States, David. You know the States, Jose. I'm sure you know her. It's only a small place, and she said Extraordinary is unique, creative, and so funny, which I think we all agree with.
Where in the States is she from? We need to know now.
I don't remember. I don't actually know because it doesn't always say.
Okay.
Like we have the list.
We know she's from the States somewhere.
But she's from the States.
She doesn't need stalkers.
Louisiana.
Ooh, good
choice. Molly Sue,
probably Cajun.
If you're listening, drop us a message when this episode comes out and say, I'm actually from so-and-so. Unless you don't want to broadcast where you live on the internet to loads of people, at least there are thousands and thousands of people.
Loads of people?
I upped it to thousands and thousands of people, clearly.
Yes, if you don't want to be found, type in all caps, leave me alone, Neil. That'd be hilarious.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm off to make sure the shaker across the road is definitely not a naked guy called Jizzlord. David's off to practice. David's off to practice his fish summoning powers, and Jose, because he has a goatee, is definitely Gregor in disguise, who is, and as we know, anyone who has a goatee is the evil version of that person, David.
Oh, no, I think if anyone sees Jose is definitely the cum man. Just look at that man. He knows what he's doing.
I appreciate it.
And we're out. Bye, everyone.